Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction,
I don't think any words can explain a man's life.
The broadcasting system and its affiliated stations present Columbia Network takes pride in presenting. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts.
It was a voice. Just a voice. I never really saw him. He was only
the hero,
Orson Welles,
a great lover,
Orson Welles,
and a dirty dog.
Orson Welles.
Good morning, this is Orson Welles speaking.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Orson Welles.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen.
This is Orson Welles speaking.
I'm a Unicron.
Well, here it is. If anybody wants to see it.
All right, class, everybody come on in. Simmer down. Take your seats, please.
Okay, all right. Right off the bat, who changed my name on the board to Lick Her? That's not even creative. Come on.
Although I will take credit for writing I hardly know her underneath. So
that was you son of a bitch. Whatever.
Welcome back, class, to Wells U. I don't really have a solid intro for this thing yet, but we're the podcast that is taking as deep a dive into the life of the great filmmaker Orson Welles as any podcast has ever done. Could someone do it better? Probably, but they're not doing it. So you just got us for right now.
So by default, we're the best.
Also,
are we a podcast? Because I'm into maintaining the kayfabe that this is a college class.
That too.
Yes.
We are
a pod class.
A pod class. There it is.
There it is.
We found it. 3 episodes in, we found it.
All right, we can all go home now.
And yet we're still calling these lectures podcasts. What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
So as we mentioned last week, we are here to discuss the life of young George Orson Welles, born into this world on May 6th, 1915. However, Hope, a point of business that we I don't know if we avoided or just forgot about last week.
I mean, I know my reasoning, which is I completely just didn't read that far down on the page. What's your excuse?
That was your part to research is my excuse.
Well, then I accept the fault / blame. Yes. So, 1915. We got into some historical events last time. They weren't really great. Besides what was it? It was Babe Ruth's first home run. Let's cling on to that good news a little
Happened
bit.
On Orson's birthday too, on May 6th.
Hey, look at that. I call it Providence. Because we were just getting so mired down in all of the bad news, like the Germans first using poison gas as a weapon at the during a battle of World War I. Holy shit. Mm-hmm. But other bad news, if you're into the optics, good news if you like technical film achievement.
And even if you do, not that great news.
Still
honestly.
Not that great. D.W. Griffith's Civil War epic, The Birth of a Nation, was released in 1915. Do we have an actual release date on that? Or
January 1 and 2 were the premiere dates. So
man,
I'm not
starting
sure.
Off strong, 1915.
Right, just right off the bat. I think I mentioned you earlier, the very first thing that happened in 1915 was The Birth of a Nation, which you can find in its entirety on Wikipedia. That movie just exists in totality on Wikipedia. So
I mean, it is in the public domain, which means that we welcome techno remixes.
Do we welcome them or do we accept them?
I would be interested to see what people could come up with. Certainly,
I think I'd rather see a Kung Pao Enter the Fist style re-edit of that film.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm into that sales pitch. Hey, great news. 3 episodes in, we've fixed Birth of a Nation. We did it.
Hooray!
Yeah, setting the bar low.
Historic for so many reasons, this podcast class.
Podcasts. Good God in heaven. So yeah, that's the big news coming fresh out of the gate in 1915, the year of Orson's birth.
And you might wonder if the man himself had any thoughts on D.W. Griffith and his film, his what is considered by many to be his masterwork achievement. And the answer is yes.
Oh, man, I was so ready to say I'm prepared to say no and stake my entire life and savings on it.
Oh, glad you didn't do that.
I'm very glad I didn't do that, especially because I have the tab of your notes open here, which opens with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, the first thing that happens in 1915. It's not until like halfway down the page that we get to the less auspicious birth of Orson Welles. Wells on Griffith. He says in conversation with Peter Bogdanovich, this is these quotes are all taken from the book This is Orson Welles, which is a masterwork. Read it.
Oh wow, you've added citations. Well,
I've added citations for everything.
This is horrifying.
In case I need to make any mid-class references, I have my page numbers secured.
Stephen, I'm glad I drunk texted you because I am such a burnout. You terrify me. This is incredible.
I used to be an educator. Like this is not new to me. I've done this many times before.
I used to be educated, and here we are. So,
I mean, one could probably debate how well that was that took, but I kid. We didn't introduce ourselves. We should probably introduce ourselves.
T.A. Hope Lickner, she, her.
T.A. Stephen Foxworthy, he, him. And this is, once again, Wells You. Now, what did Orson have to say about D.W. Griffith? I'm so glad you asked.
God damn it.
He says, I have never really hated Hollywood except for its treatment of D.W. Griffith.
Orson.
No town, no industry, no profession, no art form owes so much to a single man.
Orson.
Every filmmaker who has followed him has done just that. Followed him. He made the first close-up and moved the first camera. But he was more than a founding father and a pioneer. His works will ensure his invention. Well, I typed something wrong there. His works will ensure his inventions. The Griffith films are far less dated today than they were a quarter of a century ago, when we drank together under the pink Christmas tree and I failed so dismally to express what he means to me, to all of us. I have failed again. He is beyond tribute.
That paragraph took a turn I wasn't expecting, certainly.
Yeah, endure was the word, not ensure. I typed all these notes on my phone, so the spelling and grammatical errors are just going to be something I'm going to have to work through.
Shame on you for taking 7 pages of notes.
It really is a shame.
Christ alive.
That's Garamond size 11 for those curious at home. And because Hope gave me such shit last week, they are all chronological by year, month, or season.
I'm glad I'm having some sort of influence over this podcast.
I mean, it was your idea. I would hope so.
Was it my idea or my fault? I think we're leaning into the latter.
I leave it to our students to decide the answer to that question.
Yes. We have not posted any of these episodes yet, so remains to be seen.
We'll find out.
Yep. It's gonna be grisly.
So following that exchange, Bogdanovich asks Welles if D.W. Griffith is the best director in history, to which Welles says, well, best is a bad word. There are only a few artists in all the arts who can be called the best without any argument. I can only think of 2, Mozart and Shakespeare. Diego Velázquez for my money, but there you get arguments. The best is a very dicey kind of thing to decide. But if you're backed up against the wall on the matter of directors, isn't it going to have to be the founding father? To which Bogdanovich says, well, he's very sentimental, to which Wells says, there's no defense against that charge, of course. He was very much of his epoch. He was an actor from Belasco's kind of theater, and in that tradition, sentimentality was a big ingredient. Then says he's influenced everyone who's ever made a movie. Which is a similar kind of praise to the one Truffaut would eventually give Wells, which is that everyone will always owe him everything.
Yeah.
Very similar kind of praise from Wells to Griffith in this point. And
it is very much a standing on the shoulders of giants sort of industry.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, there are the innovators and there are the entertainers, and then there are the issue artists, all of which have their place within the grand scheme of things. I think Griffith was doing both innovation and issue, The issue, unfortunately, was racism.
Ugh.
And that,
and was it ever?
Yeah. I've not seen Birth of a Nation. I really don't have a desire to see Birth of a Nation, because everyone I've talked to that has seen it goes, yeah, you can skip that one. Literally every person whose opinion I respect on film who has seen Birth of a Nation goes, you're not missing anything.
We should host a screening of Birth of a Nation.
No,
but when the
automatically no.
But when the lights go down and the screen comes up, it's just Blazing Saddles.
Okay, I'm back on.
See?
I'm back on board.
See? There you go. All right.
I'm back on board.
There we go. All right, good.
When Bogdanovich then later in their conversation compares the innovations of Citizen Kane, based on a quote by Andrew Sarris, compares the innovations of Citizen Kane to the innovation of Birth of a Nation, which Welles completely balks at, says Birth of a Nation had genuine innovations. The close-up, the moving shot, everything. The whole language of film is in it. So there you go. That is Orson Welles on Birth of a Nation and D.W. Griffith. There you are.
I'm so glad we're covering this right off the top of before we even get to his birth.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh.
This will not be the only time this episode where you just witness Hope completely losing her will to live. It's going to happen
It's been
a few more times.
It's been a week. I'm going to not go ahead and date when we record this episode, but it has been a week.
Or as of the recording of this, exactly a week.
Jesus Christ. Let's move on.
Orson
had a lot of ants.
George Orson Welles, born into this earth on May 6th, 1915, Anno Domini, that is to say the year of our Lord, in the sleepy big town of Kenosha, Wisconsin, known throughout the Midwest as Little Chicago at the time. Really,
Little Chicago, adorable.
Not much about his early life. In fact, when you start the third chapter of Patrick McGilligan's Young Orson, which is where a bulk of the research for this episode comes from, also some from Simon Callow's The Road to Xanadu, volume 1 of his Orson Welles biography, not auto, just regular type biography. McGilligan starts in 1916 with Beatrice Wells and her activism. So she is leading a contingent of 500 suffragettes to a meeting with Woodrow Wilson to demand women's suffrage. This is the man who basically ran in America's first campaign and won the White House with it. So progress, not really his fortitude. He also screened, the first ever screening in the White House was D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, a movie of which Woodrow Wilson was a big fucking fan. So there you go.
God damn it.
But Beatrice Wells becomes really, her activism takes a couple of different forms. She's also, we mentioned last week, the first woman elected to public office in Kenosha on the school board, a school board commissioner. She also is a performer and performs a self-authored storiette called Mother and Child, talking about mother's privilege to address difficult subjects with her child, things like sex and death, while they're still at a young and impressionable age. Which, in case you were wondering, yes, Beatrice Wells was a sex education advocate. We stand.
Fantastic. All right.
We stand. She is elected to her second term of school board commissioner that spring. The margin has shrunk, though. She's only leading by 30 votes, only wins the office by 30 votes on her second term. That summer, 1916, Orson would take his first trip to New York City, not even, or I guess barely even a year old at that point. The New York City trips would become something of a tradition, particularly for Orson and his father, Dick, as the young man gets older, and it's there that he manages to meet some of the great, manages to Forrest Gump his way through the theater. He meets his dad's good friends with John Barrymore. Yes, of those Barrymores.
Of the E.T. Barrymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Like,
I could not pull another fucking Barrymore movie out of my head. Batman Forever. There it is. All right, keep going.
Never
Keep going.
Been Kissed, Home
Yeah,
Fries.
Batman Forever. Batman Forever.
Okay.
It's the most bisexual movie ever made.
It really is. For reasons.
Besides possibly Casablanca.
1999's The Mummy would like a word.
They're not as...
That is
an argument.
That is our generation's bisexual awakening. You kind of can't deny that.
That's fair. That's fair. The way Nicole Kidman looks at Batman, though, it's yeah.
I mean, that was a different kind of awakening for me. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so it's the way Nicole Kidman looks at Batman and Chris O'Donnell's little earring. That's what it is.
Okay, there it is.
That's what it is.
That you won me back. I'm back.
There we go. We got there. Okay, good.
And then very suddenly, Beatrice starts to pull back on her political affiliations that autumn, intending to focus on her music career, which becomes more of a focus for her as she begins to care for Orson as he gets older. Also, it is worth noting that Dr. Maurice Bernstein, who we mentioned very briefly, or Bernstein, I think, sorry, who we mentioned briefly last week as a figure in Orson's life who will become quite prominent, on December 31st of 1916, marries Mina Ellman. She's an aspiring singer, classical singer. She's the younger sister of virtuoso violinist Misha Ellman. They marry at the Hotel Statler in Buffalo, New York. The Welleses are not in attendance. Shortly after their wedding, they moved to Kenosha, Wisconsin, just around the corner from Dick and Bea.
You know, I had that thought over the past few weeks. His name really was Dick Head. Wow. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love and hate that you incepted that knowledge into my brain. Well done.
Yours and everyone else's who's listened to that episode.
Yeah. Good Lord.
Richard Head Wells, and he went by Dick Wells.
Dick, Jesus Christ.
So I will try as much as I can to refer to Orson's father as Dick and his older brother as Richard.
Okay.
Because there is another Wells. I did intimate last week or infer one of those last week that Richard probably had some kind of learning disability, and he may very well have, but what became increasingly clear through this section of the reading is that Richard had a lot of behavioral problems and was just really shitty at school. So those could stem from mental problems. We're not sure. But in terms of like a child with disability, like a learning disability, which is what I suggested earlier, there's no real evidence to suggest that.
That's fair.
So,
I mean, we're also going off of, secondhand historical record and trying to make any kind of diagnosis off of that.
Right.
So.
And we haven't read all of this to start with either. So we are also learning as we go. So there's going to be some incomplete knowledge. There will be correctives. I can pretty much guarantee you.
Oh, absolutely.
Like all of this is going to happen. And unfortunately, if anyone catches them in real time, we won't be responding to them until at least a week, if not weeks later, because we're doing a lot of prep work on this one for our own sanity and necessity.
Unfortunately, yes. I enjoy owning sanity. I've never owned one before, so it's kind of a novel experience, and I'd like to keep it intact as long as I can.
Good luck.
Thanks. It's going to be...
I'm rooting for you.
Thanks. Going to be a fun challenge.
Particularly now.
Yeah. Well, keeping it posy, I might have to introduce myself under a new name in a couple of episodes, but we'll see how that shakes out.
In 1917, starting off the year, Badger Brass, the company that Dick Wells founded with a couple of other gentlemen, is sold. Made
the bicycle lamp, I believe.
Correct. Yes.
Hey, I remembered something. Class does really work.
It does. Hey, we go to school to learn. We come to this place for magic.
We do.
Speaking of Nicole Kidman,
I don't have any gummies on me. I have to pop a gummy at. We come to this place for magic. But Badger Brass sold to CM. Jesus Christ, cat jump scare. Okay, I'm going to note that. Continue, please.
Yes, the Badger Brass is sold to CM Hall Lamp Company in Detroit for a sum that is estimated as to be around $400,000 in 1917 dollars, which adjusted for inflation to 2024 dollars is going to be about 10.8 million.
Not fucking bad for a
Not
bicycle lamp.
fucking bad. Dick's share with inflation, according to Simon Callow, would have been about 100,000 of those $400,000, which is about 2.7 million in today's monies. So he is, by modern standards, effectively a millionaire. And so at 44, Dick Wells announces his retirement.
That son of a bitch. Christ alive.
What a way to live. Now, this is our first point of major contention between Callow and McGilligan in their accounts of
drama.
The wealth. We're going to get a lot of this because, again, we're dealing with, and we addressed this in our first episode a little bit, Wells's life is, he is his own myth maker.
Oh, yeah.
And loved fucking with people. And so you never know which of his stories to believe and which ones not to. We're going to try to get as much of the information out there as we can. McGilligan does a very good job of corroborating with other sources in a way that, from what I've seen so far, Callow really doesn't. Like, McGilligan does the legwork. So when Callow says this is probably where Dick's alcoholism really starts in earnest, and of course, Callow attributes it to him, Dick being cuckolded by Dr. Maurice Bernstein.
Jesus Christ.
A thing we will get to later.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That is another point of contention.
Okay, well, I have great news. I've just decided that trying to biographize Orson Welles is a contact sport, and I'm thrilled to announce that we now have an athletics department, and it purely consists of the actual professional biographers fighting one another.
God, I want that so much.
Right? Okay, who's on your March Madness brackets? We got Bogdanovich, we've got
Callow, we've got Noble, Brady,
Frank Brady, yeah. In this corner,
Barbara Leeming.
In this corner, weighing 655 pages, it's Frank Brady, Citizen Wells. Yeah, sorry. Okay, had to. Good. We're off to a great start. 22 minutes into this episode.
We're making great time here. I am only on page 2.
2! Christ!
2 of 7. So Callow suggests that the alcoholism starts here. McGilligan disputes this. He says it probably didn't really happen until the Wells family moved to Chicago.
All that Malort. How do I get it wrong every time?
You're thinking of Merlot, and it's not fucking Merlot.
Fuck her.
And then when you start to say it, I forget it for about 10 seconds, and then I have to remember it while you're ranting through all the other options it could be.
The problem is the actual word is so unappealing in terms of a mouthfeel. So you want to make it your brain wants to make it prettier.
Nah.
No.
It's fucking Chicago, dude. Come on.
That's fair.
Come on. I wonder when Jeppson's Malort was first invented. Why don't you research that real quick?
Okay.
I was fucking on it.
You're giving me busy work while you do the actual legwork. Start narrating.
According to the local Kenoshans, the eyewitness reports from the people who lived with Wells in his time in Kenosha, he would drink, but not to excess. He was a fairly prominent social figure in Kenosha, and so it wouldn't have become him. When he moves to Chicago, he becomes a bit more anonymous.
Well, I have good and also terrible news. We can't really talk about Jeppson's Malort until the year it was founded, which was 1933.
Okay.
So, yeah, we will talk about that next episode, maybe.
I would say a few episodes from now.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we're not.
Right. Well, I'll have time to import a bottle. So that'll be good.
Whereas I can just walk down to the corner liquor store and buy one.
Son of a bitch.
Because I live in fucking Chicago.
Oh, yeah? Well, I have soft pretzels. Fuck you.
Oh yeah, because those don't get sold in Chicago ever at all.
Not Philly fucking soft pretzels, god damn it. Every time I see a recipe for a Philly cheesesteak anywhere like farther outside of the city than Lancaster, I'm like, no, that's no.
I'm told
You're using the good cheese? Fuck off.
I'm told there's a place here in the city that has a mean cheesesteak.
There's also weirdly, I believe, a bar in London that is entirely Philadelphia based, which is odd, but I'm glad we're spreading like a viral infection.
I was gonna say, if Philly's gonna spread, that's the only way it's gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, honestly, Chicago not that far off in some ways.
You've got to mask up and prevent Phillyitis.
Right. So I'm excited to discover that. Unfortunately, Orson was not in Chicago when Malort was a thing. He had already gone to New York at that point.
God damn it, Orson. You're fucking everything up with your racism.
Your love of D.W. Griffith.
And you're being in the wrong geographic location at the invention of a completely unrelated thing. God damn it.
That you probably would have hated.
Probably.
Again, I mean, he hated Paul Masson. He probably would not have liked Malort.
Well, his loss.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Christ alive. Okay, so that gets us up to when?
So we're still in January of 1917.
Christ alive.
Around this time, Richard Ives Welles, who is Orson's brother, suffers an injury. No one's really sure how. He either falls down a flight of stairs or gets hurt playing football. One thing I'm learning about Richard Welles is the dude was prone to getting into accidents.
Ugh.
Dude got hurt a lot. And as a result, missed a lot of school, which might have been why he wasn't so good at it. Because he wasn't there long enough for it to make an impact. Dr. Bernstein sends him to a hospital in Chicago, and his parents are basically going back and forth between Kenosha and Chicago in order to stay with him. While they're between the stress and moving between their hospital and their hotel in the middle of a Chicago winter, Beatrice basically has something of a breakdown and is prescribed to bed rest and is basically sent by Bernstein back to Kenosha and put on bed rest. The first real sign of like poor health from her.
I do I joke about this all the time, but I love how we're currently living through the I'm gonna stab you phase of medical science.
Yeah.
Which, like, if you are losing blood, you got to get stabbed to get more blood. If you got stabbed, you got to get stabbed
again.
You know, yeah. If you want a really deep, relaxing massage, you're gonna get stabbed. Meanwhile, this is the era we're talking about historically of what's that one tweet? It's you've got ghosts in your blood. You should do cocaine about it. That's the current level of medical science. That it's like being prescribed the seaside for your health.
Right.
We should go back to that.
There is a little later we're going to discuss that Bernstein, after Beatrice's death, basically becomes Dick's kind of uneasy companion, fellow guardian of Orson / doctor. And he's treating him for an illness. And basically he's treating it with gin. Because at that point, gin and tonic is effectively a health drink because of quinine, which is basically the ivermectin of its day. I joke, but like...
No, I know. Like I just said about medical science.
Right.
And like, Christ alive.
Do cocaine about it, right.
Do cocaine about it.
Laudanum, I think, was red wine and cocaine, I think is what that...
Of course, yeah.
Or, no, it was like opium. Red wine and opium, I think is what it was.
I would just like to personally drink a straight bottle of THC, which I have kind of been doing in slow motion over the course of this evening. By a bottle, I mean bong, but here nor there.
I mean, if you drink bong water, isn't it essentially THC infused water?
It's gross. I know. I can tell you that much from experience.
You're talking to someone who has smoked weed exactly 3 times in his life. So
cool. Try sneezing while taking a bong rip and see
what
that gets you. Yeah, it's a fun time.
I'd rather not. I'd
Yeah.
really rather not.
Yeah, there you go. It's probably smart for everybody all around. A lot of Febreze. A lot of Febreze.
There you go.
So Bernstein prescribes her bed rest.
Yeah. So she basically has to go back to Kenosha by herself and stay in bed. Orson is there with his maternal grandmother, who kind of watched him while Beatrice would make her trips to Chicago, or when she and Dick were traveling. 1917, April 1917, 4 months after they got married, the Bernsteins separate. Mina moves out of the home, and effectively they don't get divorced until a couple of years later. Like, I think it finalizes the next July 1918. But she's gone. McGilligan suggests that the marriage dissolved as a result of Bernstein not really being able to use his artistic connections to further Mina's career as a singer, of which he said she had little aptitude.
Shit.
Callow, on the other hand, because Callow is much more, I think, prone to believing the scandal from what I've seen, suggests, quote, cupidity and treachery. I don't know who was treacherying who, but someone got treachered, and treachered right out of a marriage. And Callow says at this point that Bernstein started an affair with Beatrice Welles on the rebound.
Christ alive.
So, like, and the depictions of this man in Callow's account and in McGilligan's account cannot be more different. For Callow, he is a Lothario. Man is just like having sex with every married woman he meets, basically. Always married women. Like, Callow's like, he's got to have a third. That's where the thrill is for him. And I'm like, dude, are you okay? And that, or it's like, you know, he doesn't want someone he wants someone who's available but not too available, you know, like, how married are you, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas McGilligan kind of defers to Orson and sees Bernstein as kind of this figure of almost like pity, like this guy who just was always pining for Beatrice and it was never requited. Like, and he gets that mostly, I think, from Orson's account. And Orson was kind of always like, I think they loved each other, but he loved her that way and she did not.
Yeah.
Is kind of the impression that I get from Orson. And given kind of where the marriage of Dick and Beatrice ends up, I'm more inclined to believe McGilligan on this. And we'll get into that a little later.
Okay.
But in August of that year, Orson's maternal grandmother dies, age 59, of colon cancer.
Ugh.
And Beatrice is basically takes ill with grief, is so distraught she becomes ill. And needs to be taken to St. Luke's Hospital in Chicago, a hospital that decades later will be the birthplace of one Robin Williams.
Wow. Okay.
It is on the National Registry of Protected Places in Chicago. And when I do my Welles tour of Chicago one of these days, it's going to be a stop.
There you go. All right.
So there you go. Which moves us into the fall. Richard is sent to a boarding school at the Todd School for Boys in Woodstock, Illinois. Again, one of those places that's like less than 2 hours from where I live.
Crazy.
He basically, this is the first boarding school he's sent to of, I think, 3. And he, surprised, does not do well there. On vacations, he would basically scare Orson with stories about the Todd School. Orson would later say, I knew about Todd as criminals know about San Quentin.
Jesus Christ.
So just kind of tell, and I mean, it, by all intents and purposes, and we'll get into this more next week, Todd is a very strict school. We'll get more into the origins of Todd, I'm sure, next week. Callow has a significant chunk on the origin of the Todd School, which I can dig into a little bit if McGilligan doesn't, but I can't imagine McGilligan's not going to. That dude, thorough, Jeffrey.
Also, for those keeping track, we've made it to page 3 of the notes.
I mean, we're half an hour in. We're making really good time.
We're not doing bad. Yeah, we're doing okay. We got 10 years to kick around with this shit. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got all the time in the world, kids.
yeah.
Just like James Bond and what was her name? Emma Peel. Mrs. Peel, was that
Emma. Yeah, I can't remember the actress's name now.
Diana Rigg.
No. There
Diana
it
Rigg.
is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I knew I would get there. I just had to my brain had to do the exercises. October 1917, Beatrice puts on a Red Cross benefit concert in her mother's honor, featuring renowned tenor Louis Kreidler, who was a good friend of hers, one of the many artists that would show up at her lavish parties. And then in December 1917, Beatrice basically says, I'm resigning as school commissioner effective immediately. No real reason is given, but within the next few months, the Welles relocate to Chicago, Illinois. Now with her mother passed away, Beatrice basically sees no reason to stay in Kenosha. She was from Chicago, grew up in the Chicago area, and as a result, probably wanted to get back there to continue to pursue her artistic ambitions. And Dick went along with it, basically. Didn't really seem to care. So by Easter Sunday, which I believe was March 31st of that year, they're basically settled in Chicago full time. Orson is taken to the Illinois Theater in Chicago in May for his birthday, his third birthday, to see the performance of Eugene Moran's Les Cathedrals.
Thank you. That's in italics, and I'm not wearing my glasses.
Yes, you are welcome. Starring stage legend Sarah Bernhardt. Not to be confused with Sandra Bernhardt. That's a different person. But Sarah Bernhardt, stage legend. A very common thing when Orson is taken to see a show, he will very often be taken backstage by any number of his guardians. His parents and guardians being patrons of the arts. Pretty much
Convenient.
pretty much always found their way backstage. And so again, this is kind of where he gets to meet all these insanely famous people. At this point, Bernhardt has I think a prosthetic leg and is in a wheelchair and put on oxygen after the show. Like,
Jesus Christ.
She's not doing well. And basically, Orson says he remembers seeing her backstage in her wheelchair, recovering after the show, and he puts his little hand on her, like, crooked, liver-spotted hand, and the idea that in that moment, she passed the artistic torch from herself to this little child. Again, this feels like one of those exaggerated Orson stories where he's like, yes, and as a child, I touched this old lady's hand, and she was a legend.
God in heaven, Orson.
Not the only one of these, I will tell you.
I am aware. That's just the beginning of the end for this nonsense.
Oh, yes. Again, in July of that year, Bernstein and his wife finalized their divorce. Maurice Bernstein does remain in Kenosha for a little bit after the Welles' move, but I think after the divorce pretty much says, fuck it, and moves to Chicago to be near his beloved Beatrice. And in fact, Orson makes a point to say he moved to Chicago to be near my mother. Like, he says that pretty explicitly. So again, Lothario or hopeless romantic?
Could go either way.
Could go either way.
Send in your fan fiction to AO3, kids.
Hope will definitely read it.
I will not, because there's no lesbians involved, but I will bookmark it and leave nice comments. So
she's got a type, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's called Disaster Lesbians.
In August, Orson takes his first stage role at age 3 as Trouble, one of the children of Madame Butterfly, in the Puccini opera at the Ravinia, which is actually a place that I have been in Highland Park, Illinois. There's a brewery up there called Ravinia Brewing that I have been to. And I have driven by this open air theater where apparently Orson had his first ever stage performance. So,
and title of the character was Trouble. That feels prophetic.
Yeah, prescient, as it
It's
were. Yeah.
literally, like I said last episode, it's just like, this is literally just, Christopher Nolan wrote this like as an adaptation of Batman Begins. It's like, what magic, Mr. Wayne?
Hold off, because we're about 5 years away from The Dead Woman.
Oh, Christ alive.
To really
alive.
bring home that Christopher Nolan wrote this shit angle.
Absolutely. Like, I know there's other examples of, like, origin stories and things slotting into place a little too cleanly, but Batman Begins is really like, that's just my touchstone for everything.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why, but there it is.
No, for good reason. Which is why this episode
because of Michael Caine. But...
Orson Begins.
That definitely didn't tickle my fancy after a bong rip. So,
in September of 1918, 2 months before the armistice is signed,
Jesus Christ,
Dick Wells signs up for the World War I draft.
Good timing, Dick.
He is 45 years of age, and guess what the cutoff is?
Bad timing, Dick.
45 years of age.
God damn it, Dick.
He barely fucking makes it to sign up for the draft, but doesn't really. It seems very performative because it's right there at the end.
Yeah, you tried, Dick. You don't get any kind of medal. I'll give you a little gold star sticker.
It's the Bart Simpson, at least you tried cake, and then he goes and chucks it in the trash. Like that's Dick Wells signing up for the army in World War I.
It's absolutely abysmal. Christ.
In February of 1919, on February 1st, the beginning of the end of the Wellses' marriage, as Beatrice discovers Dick in an adulterous affair.
Shock, I say.
Right, effectively ending their marriage. They never actually divorce, which we'll get to. But this effectively leads to basically the trouble that the two of them will have for the next 5 years of their lives as a family. Basically, in all ways but publicly, they're done with each other. I think Dick is always kind of hoping for some kind of reconciliation that never fully comes.
I mean, I get it. Beatrice sounds like a hell of a lady. I would have liked to have known her personally.
Yeah.
Dick fumbled that, and he don't get a second chance.
Yeah, and apparently this was not the first time he had done something like this, and apparently was very unapologetic about it.
Wait, hang on, let me react appropriately. No.
Do the Captain Kirk. Hand over the mouth, hand over the face. Yeah. Basically, like, she kicks him out, he goes to a hotel, and then keeps up the affair with the same woman, essentially. Christ. Like, in the hotel that, she's tossed him to. And, of course, to add insult to injury, right around this time, Richard gets kicked out of the Todd School. No one really knows why. Orson's headmaster, Roger Hill, later surmised that maybe he'd been caught with a local girl, but he has no evidence to suggest that this is actually what happened. It could have also been due to injuries sustained by Richard. He would then, at the insistence of Dr. Bernstein, be enrolled in the Latin School of Chicago, an institution that is still around.
Huh. And how's that going?
It's been around for 135 years, and they've got a very nice website.
Hey, sometimes good web design is all you really need.
I mean, it's a preparatory school, like, very much so. But yeah,
I do appreciate how young Richard Wells and Dr. Bernstein have, like, so many different, like, potential characterizations applied to them throughout these biographies. But everybody universally agrees Dick is a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, it's nice to know that there's some agreement.
Right. And I think, Orson's love for his mother cannot be overstated, like, at all. But I think his relationship with his father, as with most artists and their father, is complicated.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
An artist not getting along with their dad? What?
I know.
I've never heard of such a thing.
I know.
Absolutely atrocious. Tell me another lie.
Have you met my friend Steven Spielberg?
I told you this, but Bex's one-line review after seeing Close Encounters for the first time was, Steven, go to therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he openly admits, I didn't go to therapy, I made movies.
It shows.
We know, Steven.
We really know.
We've been going with you to therapy. We've seen all your therapy. I mean, movies.
What did I like tried to pitch a trilogy to Bex, and it's like, let's do like a mini movie marathon. It's just like the Steven Spielberg dad therapy trilogy, and it's Close Encounters, Last Crusade, and Fabelmans. Just all back to back. Yeah.
Fuck, that's good. That's real good.
Yeah. I really love Close Encounters. That's
I'd be
possibly
into that.
My favorite Spielberg.
I have a very unconventional favorite Spielberg that everyone looks at me like I'm an idiot when I tell them my favorite Spielberg.
Ooh, is it, hang on, I want to guess. Is it early period or late period?
It's late period.
Late period. Interesting. Okay. I'm not as familiar. It can't be as mind-numbingly strange as Bex's choice of second favorite Spielberg movie, which is Ready Player One.
No, God,
which is inexplicable. I cannot.
Not that late.
Great. Okay, just tell me.
AI, artificial intelligence.
Interesting. I have yet to see that.
Owns bones. That movie rules.
I have yet to see that, and I love robots, so that fills up my alley. So yeah.
And it was a film that was developed by Kubrick.
By Kubrick, yeah.
So I mean, it's got that element
Robin
to
Williams
it.
is in it, right?
For a little bit, yeah. For one
bit.
scene, Jude Law plays a robot gigolo.
Yeah, I know that. He's very pretty.
He's very pretty. Chris Rock has a cameo in there too.
Of course.
Brendan Gleeson plays a racist.
Sure.
It rules, man. I don't know what to tell you. AI rules. It is my favorite Spielberg movie.
That's understandable. I just don't like watching new things by myself. It sucks.
I
like to have somebody to respond to the movie with.
Yeah, I get it.
Which is why it's going to take me 3 to 4 nights to watch The Magnificent Seven.
That movie also rules.
It really does rule. It's upsetting how well Yul Brynner is working for me. It's really, truly upsetting.
Have you seen Yul Brynner? Like, not really surprising.
Oh, yes. My God, what an energy.
Here's the question. How's Bronson working for you?
Subtler than I thought he would. He's, again, a lot of these guys just have presence, and the energy thing really works for me. So
that is an amazing cast of actors and Horst Buchholz. Like, not really a fan of what he's doing in that movie for many reasons, but yeah. Let's cast this up and coming German kid as the Mexican.
Yeah.
Hollywood in the 60s. What are you gonna do?
Yep. Oh well.
And speaking of Hollywood, in 1920.
Tell me what happened in 1920.
On February 26, 1920, a little movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is released in Germany.
Hey, I know that one.
This would become an art house staple and would be one of those things you could probably only see in like big metropolitan areas. In fact, Welles on Caligari says in those days, Caligari was the cineast's dream picture, It hasn't stood up, thank goodness, but it used to be considered a great classic. You saw it every time you went to New York. That and Blood of a Poet by Cocteau and Buñuel's Un Chien Andalou.
Now, I want to argue his point there. Like, I saw The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari in like a film class in like 2008, and I thought it fucking ruled. I don't know what he's talking about. It doesn't hold up.
You're right.
It fucking owns.
But this is also the same man. Who said that the works of D.W. Griffith are far less dated today than they were a quarter of a century ago.
Oh God, you brought back D.W. Griffith. God damn it! I thought we were safe. I thought we were free, Stephen.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the podcast.
God damn it!
No, I mean, we have to say, as much as we love Orson, flawed individual, and again, we have said this before. We will say this again.
We will again and again and again.
And let me just check my notes here again.
Again, like
children. Very flawed individual, and that sometimes with regard to taste. Like, taste is a subjective thing. Not everyone's going to agree, and we're not always going to agree with Orson, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I want to believe.
I do too.
In Orson.
I do too. Look,
Yeah.
there's a reason we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, however flawed he might be, he's an object of fascination for both of us.
He's insane is what he is, and I love him to bitty pieces.
Absolutely.
Yes, he's my comfort real life blorbo. That's for all the Tumblerinas out there. Turns out Orson Welles is a bit of a thing on Tumblr. So I'm gonna be trying to put in some numbers on Tumblr on Orson Welles.
Do we need a Welles U Pod Tumblr account?
I can start one this evening before I go to bed.
Fucking A, let's do it.
Okay. Kick
Absolutely.
ass.
Love
Kick ass.
for us. We're almost out of 1920 because not much happens. 1920, an uneventful year in the life of the Welleses. Yes, after this, we've got 6 more years.
What page are we up to? 4.
We're on 4. We're almost halfway there. Beatrice Wells basically performs publicly for the first time in years. In April 1920 with her protege Phyllis Fergus, later Phyllis Fergus Hoyt. They would perform together basically for the next year and some months until Phyllis marries Thatcher Hoyt in July 1921, and basically then just takes several years off. She would not perform publicly again until after Beatrice's death. In the spring of 1921, Richard Welles suffers another injury and basically gets sent home to Dr. Bernstein, and thus ending his tenure at the Latin School of Chicago.
Oh, you poor bastard.
So that fall, then, he is sent to the Northwest Military and Naval Academy in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Oh, Christ. Worst case scenario, buddy.
And he is almost...
Pardon me.
Those tiny penised individuals just driving by my apartment.
Christ alive.
He's almost immediately sent back due to a cord lesion, which is believed to cause mood swings and weakness in his right side. Bernstein recommends he get a surgery to correct it, and keeps he says it's deemed successful, keeps writing to Northwest that they're going to be sending him back. He never goes back, basically. And as they are now separated, as Richard is now basically home, Beatrice says, enough of you, you're going to go live with your father, because he needs a, quote, strong example. Why Dick was chosen, anyone's guess. But when your other option is Bernstein, it makes sense.
Did you omit the word negative from strong example?
No, I did not.
Strong negative example. Now, watch him and do the opposite of that.
Do the opposite of that. Although, by all accounts, he does not. Because in the fall of 1922, about a year later, he leaves home to join a vaudeville troupe.
There's always money in a vaudeville troupe.
Mm-hmm.
Checks notes. Looks like he changed his name from Richard Ives Wells to Groucho Marx. What? Okay, well, good on you. No. That's a lie I just made up.
It is.
Darn.
It is absolutely a lie. By all accounts, he is not successful in that endeavor.
Really?
This begins a long period of Richard Welles leaving home, coming back home, leaving home, coming back home, ad infinitum, essentially.
Oh my God. Really just, like, again, it's going to make me mad again, but just, like, the lack of, like, the ability for education to adapt to kids that need, help.
Right. And I mean,
everybody gets lumped into quote unquote special education, and it gets stigmatized and this and that and the other thing. And
here's the thing, like,
shit like this.
Beatrice is one of the ones advocating for that kind of shit, but I don't think she has the language, or was, I should say, because at this point she's not anymore.
Yeah.
But she was in Kenosha one of the ones advocating for that shit, but I don't think they had the language for the kinds of things that were really needed for a child like that. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it sucks. It really just sucks. We know so precious little about, like, him in general, because as I said, this is like second and third hand information.
Right.
And probably a lot of it taken from Orson himself, who also was going off of second and third hand information. So,
right.
Yeah, I feel bad for the bastard. So,
yeah. I mean, they're not close. Like, given their age difference, they really had nothing in common other than that they both like to paint. So, like, they didn't really spend any kind of time together.
But also, like, how many hobbies were available to humans in, like, 1921? You couldn't go on Reddit, could you?
No.
So, yeah.
And you know what?
Just
too
early to get
people out there
radicalized on Reddit.
living life. No one glued to their phones, just out there living.
You're right. Times were simpler then. We should go back to Birth of a Nation. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh,
what are we saying?
Oh, no.
Oh,
burn it all down. Okay.
Oh, well, you know, if the coming administration has its way, we'll be there.
Stop it. No, we're talking about Orson Welles and good things. God damn it. This is escapism for me.
Sorry.
You're okay.
Which leads us to October 13th, 1922.
Oh, thank God we've made it to 1922.
Wherein Beatrice Wells files for divorce from Richard Head Wells, citing his drunkenness, philandering, and unwillingness to provide for her or their children.
Nowadays, that's pronounced irreconcilable differences.
Right. 10 days later, however, the petition is withdrawn.
Oh, God damn it.
When Dick relinquishes his shares in Goodrich Rubber and Utah Copper to Beatrice, and agrees to deposit a monthly sum into her account.
Oh, shit.
Basically allowing her to become financially stable.
Hey, all right.
As such,
all right, the
divorce is never finalized. They remain separated to the end of their lives, but they do not divorce. And that reminds me, honestly, a lot of Orson's last marriage to Paula Maury.
Okay.
Who
I have not read that far ahead, believe it or not.
I just have this innate knowledge of Orson from all the other shit. Again, he's an object of fascination for me and has been for years.
Really?
Yes.
Go listen to the Matrix Reclamations to hear me talk about something as knowledgeably as Stephen is doing right now.
Yes.
I say knowledgeably. It's not a good example. Please keep talking.
No, it is a good example. You have an intense, deep love for that content, and I'd love that podcast for that very reason.
You're very kind. And it is completely useless in this situation because as far as I know, Orson Welles died before The Matrix happened. Yep, yes. I had to check that.
Yes.
1985 happened before The Matrix.
Yes, yeah, a good 14 years before, yes.
Man, what a shame. He'd have loved that shit.
He might have done, actually. He might have done. But no, he's married to Paula Maury for years. They separate, but never divorce. Like, Orson carries on a very public affair with Oya Kodar for like the last several years of his life.
He made at least one very large movie about it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
God in heaven.
Yep. I mean, if you haven't seen The Other Side of the Wind yet, kind of too.
I mean, I did check out the disc I have of that, and it's not something a Jedi would teach you, and it is good quality shit. I will say, capital G, capital S, good shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that when we get to it in 10 years.
Right. At least 10 years.
At least.
We got a lot of ground to cover between there.
Maybe there'll be a bootleg 4K by then. So,
but no, I mean, the story goes when Orson dies, his will stipulates that Paula gets everything. And so when Paula is literally on her way to the lawyer to sign over the rights to Wells's shit to Oya, she gets hit by a car in New York City and dies.
Holy fuck.
And so, which is why Beatrice Wells now, Wells's third daughter, is basically the keeper of the Wells estate.
That's holy shit.
Yeah. That's what that's.
Wow. All right. Well, fair enough. I mean,
not to skip to the end or anything.
I mean, yeah, spoilers for an episode we're going to do 9 years from now. But yeah, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Basically.
That's bananas. All right. So that takes us up to 1923. Skidoo.
Beatrice basically begins touring the Midwest, starts to travel with her cousin, Dudley Crafts Watson.
Sorry. The cat's name is Dudley Crafts Watson.
Yes.
That's a great fucking name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It really,
solid.
Back in these days, people knew how to fucking name a person.
God damn it, did they ever?
Richard Head Wells.
God damn.
Named Dick Head Wells. That man's name was Dick Head Wells, Hope.
Dudley Crafts Moore.
Dudley Crafts Watson. What a fucking guy.
Did I say Dudley Crafts Moore?
You did, yeah.
The fuck is wrong with me?
Dudley Moore. Like
I know the connection, but like I'm looking at the text right now, and never mind. It's fine. It's past my bedtime, and I'm still high. We're all fine here. Everything's fine.
What a great place to be, though. Honestly,
I can't really complain. I had pizza bites for dinner.
Fucking A.
That kind of Tuesday. Yeah.
I made frozen bagged risotto for dinner. That's what I did.
There you go. All right.
It was pretty tasty. Yeah. Basically she would provide piano accompaniment and he would provide lectures on any number of topics. He was basically an arts guy, Dudley Crafts Watson. He worked at the Milwaukee Art Institute for a number of years before relocating to the Chicago Art Institute. And so by the time Beatrice dies, he is basically at the Chicago Art Institute as like the head of the organization or some shit. Like he's a very prominent role within that organization at that point. In May of 1923, Beatrice is admitted to the hospital for an undisclosed surgery. McGilligan says maybe a hysterectomy, which is fairly common for women around the age of 40 in those days. And then in November of that year, Beatrice performs a very successful public solo recital. It is her one solo venue, basically. She performs it in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Clap it out, Stephen. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to pretty wide public acclaim, going by her full name, Beatrice Ives Wells. And it is, by all intents and purposes, an insanely successful endeavor, written about in all the papers as something to be seen, which is why it is so tragic that within 6 months of that recital, she would be dead. In fact,
Beatrice.
She dies on May 10th, 1924, 5 days after Orson's 9th birthday.
Jesus Christ.
When writing about it years later, he would recount going into her room with a birthday cake with 9 candles, and those 9 candles being the only illumination in the room.
Oh, I have a quote on that.
Yes, by all means, hit me with that.
Okay.
It's a good one.
All right. So this is out of my sole research point until I can invest more money in more books and time, Stephen. Citizen Wells by Frank Brady, page 8, about halfway down. And if you look, it's highlighted in orange. It should be highlighted just like that in all of your copies of the book. And if it's not, what the fuck is wrong with you? Let's see.
I don't have an orange highlighter. Help.
Orson remembered that she quoted some of his favorite lines of Shakespeare to entertain him and told him that he was to puff very hard to blow out the candles on his cake. That stupid birthday cake is just another stupid cake, she said. You'll have all the cakes you want. This would turn out to be true. But the candles are just the candles are a fairy ring, and you will never again in your whole life have just that number to blow out. And that is beautiful.
Right.
God damn it. But Orson would turn out to have many, many more cakes.
Oh, yes.
And pineapples.
Oh, yes. He said when he blew out the candles, I think he associates that with the death of his mother.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because again, and this is probably one of the last times he saw his mother alive as well. And so he would later tell his daughter, Chris, ever since I never wanted to celebrate my birthday. Which makes total sense, honestly.
Yeah.
Cause of death was indicated as acute atrophy of the liver, which is vague enough to include any number of possibilities like jaundice, hepatitis, or potentially infections caused by a blood transfusion, maybe as a result of some operation, like the undisclosed one that she'd had a year prior. Who knows?
Might have been something. Yeah.
Right.
Good Lord.
And at this, I mean, it's all conjecture, but that's basically it. Like, and so her funeral is held again just mere days later. Richard not in attendance, as his father has just gotten him a job as a apprentice fish culturist with the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries in Bozeman, Montana.
Do we have any information about what the fuck that job entails?
We do not know.
Oh my God. Okay.
I don't know what a fish culturist is.
Let alone an apprentice fish culturist?
Right. Although when I type fish culturist into the Brave search engine, the first thing that comes up is a careers article, how to become a fish culturist.
Interesting.
Learn what a fish culturist is, what they do, and how to become one.
There we go. A fish culturist is responsible for breeding, raising, and maintaining fish populations in a controlled environment, such as a hatchery or fish farm. They use a variety of techniques to control the environment, such as adjusting water temperature, pH levels, and feeding schedules in order to optimize growth and survival rates. Interesting. Sounds like Dick decided to become a bit of an amateur biologist.
Sounds really above his skill level, quite frankly.
Well, he invented a bicycle lamp and then sold that.
That's not Dick. This is Richard.
This is Richard. I'm getting my Richards confused.
Yes.
Oh no. Okay.
Yes. This is the son, Richard the son.
Then that makes less sense. Oh no.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
No. Dick is a businessman, and Dick will find his way back to business within a few years.
Oh, Richard, you're not going to your own mother's funeral. That sucks, man.
Yeah. Orson was there, and later in an interview, I think with Joseph McBride, Orson would basically say he doesn't have any good memories of Kenosha, to which Oya Kodar would basically say, you have to remember, he completely associates Kenosha with his mother's death.
Yeah.
Like, that is the connection for him. So he is not going to have any fond memories of that place whatsoever. Like, it happened at just an impressionable enough age that it kind of overshadowed everything. Now, I think this is as good a point as any to point out something that McGilligan goes into some detail about, but like this becomes kind of a canon event for Orson.
I hate that
parlance of our time.
I hate that that's entered the lexicon. Oh gosh, I hate that.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to call Beatrice his anchor being? I don't, fuck. What do we want?
His Uncle Ben?
Essentially, yes. Like, this is, it has it's an incredibly formative experience, although Welles himself would always kind of dispute this. But like, particularly when you look at his early work, the mother-son relationship is central, both to Citizen Kane and the Magnificent Ambersons. Like, you've got the Charles Foster Kane's mother, played by Agnes Moorehead, this kind of cold, unfeeling woman who sends him off to live with this, weird, doctor guy, this trust fund dude, when he's about 9 years old, the same age Orson would have been. So a kid losing his mother at a formative age. And then you've got Kane's first wife, Emily, who dies in a car crash with her son, who at the time is 8. Again, very close to the same age. Like, this idea of sons and mothers, like, losing one another at that time. And then you've got the Magnificent Ambersons, which features at its climax the death of the main character's mother, the only figure in his life who has truly loved and doted on him his entire life, who has enabled him in a real way. Bogdanovich addresses this, the scene, particularly, I think it's the scene with Susan Alexander in Citizen Kane, the scene where they're in in her apartment and they're talking to each other. And she mentions that her mother always wanted her to sing opera. And she goes, well, you know what mothers are like. And Kane's just like, yeah, he doesn't know what mothers are like. That's the whole point. And Bogdanovich brings this up to Welles, says, this is my favorite scene in the movie, to which Welles says, no, Peter, I have no rosebuds. Like,
And Spielberg wasn't thinking of anything when he made Close Encounters.
Methinks he doth protest too much.
Some men will make Citizen Kane instead of going to therapy.
There it is.
God damn it.
There it is. We did it. We memed it, everybody. We memed it.
Like we haven't done that 15 times already this episode.
So in June of 1924, Dick Wells, Maurice Bernstein, and Dudley Crafts Watson embark on a trip to Europe. They were already going to take that trip with Beatrice. They decide to continue to take it in her honor. They leave Orson in the care of Watson's wife and daughters in the town of Wyoming in upstate New York. It is here that Orson would entertain and be entertained by his female cousins. According to Orson, he lost his virginity this summer to one of his female cousins, to Dudley's middle daughter, Emily.
Cool. So what age would that make Orson in
9.
1924? Jesus. Living Christ.
Yeah.
Orson.
Yep.
Orson.
Mm-hmm. Yep. By playing
those times where I'm just like, I hope he's lying. God, I hope he's lying.
I'm sure he was.
That's comforting because, he just lied all the time anyway.
He really did. But like this is around the time when like Orson would like tell scary stories using his penchant for magic and theatricality to kind of scare his female cousins. Dudley Crafts Watson basically pinpoints this summer as the time when Orson created the shadow, just kind of trying to scare his daughters. This is also the summer where Orson would meet Prince Ali Khan. Both of them would go on to marry Rita Hayworth. So there's that. Okay.
All right. Sure.
Orson would often brag, hey, we've known each other all our lives. In the months that follow, you get this weird kind of team up between Dick Wells and Maurice Bernstein, which always feels kind of tenuous because those two guys feel like they have nothing in common.
Pardon me.
Made potentially even more awkward if you believe Callow's claims that Bernstein was fucking Beatrice. Right.
Somebody's right, and it really feels like a coin toss. You know what I mean?
I can believe either one.
Honestly, yeah. I can see it going either way.
And I am perfectly happy believing either one. I'm a little more happy believing one than the other, but I can take either one.
Yes.
But they basically take the shared responsibility of raising Orson. Dudley kind of helps when he can, but it's mostly Dick and Maury. Bernstein would call Orson Pookles.
Uh-huh.
Orson would call Bernstein Dada.
Interesting, and definitely not evidence to anything else.
Correct. This is also, again, the time when Bernstein would become Dick's physician, and when he started treating his ailment with gin. Gin and tonic, again, regarded as a medicinal beverage in the early 20th century. Dick has heart issues, cardiac issues, which would eventually kill him. And by all intents and purposes, it seems like he is self-medicating with gin during this time. Which, again, the Chicago years were right in the thick of them. So this would be the time when Dick was in the throes of alcoholism.
God
and
heaven.
It doesn't seem like the heart condition helped. That's why the drink I had earlier contained, let me check my notes here, gin.
Hey, all right.
In honor of Dick.
I'll do a pull of tequila from my freezer bottle later.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks.
And eventually Bernstein would move in with Dick to share responsibility of, raising Orson, just like an Uncle Joey before him.
I'm so mad that you threw a Full House reference into these notes. I'm so mad, Stephen.
I mean,
are we not even going to address the very special episode that they made us watch in health class in the 7th grade, where the one girl gets beer sprayed all over her and is accused by Bob Saget of being an alcoholic? Or am I just remembering that from a fog of 20 plus years? Since
I don't know.
You've
done several bong hits since then, so who's to say?
I have. Okay, so now Bernstein, who everybody thinks was fucking Dick's wife, he's taking care of Dick.
Yeah, and Dick's son.
And Dick's sons.
Right. When Richard is home.
Well, yes. Because he was also Richard's physician.
Yes.
If I'm remembering the notes from 30 minutes ago correctly.
Not even 30, like 5.
Good. Time means nothing to me anymore.
Clearly.
The linear flow of time is an illusion.
Yes.
Christ alive. Does that take us to the fall of 1924?
It does.
Okay. We should also mention, I don't know if you've got this included in your notes here, because Frank is a lot more anecdotal in the Citizen Wells, and he talks about all of the gifts that Bernstein gave to a young Orson. I don't know if that made it into your notes.
It didn't, but
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of gifts that come from a lot of sources. Bernstein takes credit for a lot of them later.
Of course he does.
Right. There's a Peter Noble's biography, The Fabulous Orson Welles, is essentially ghostwritten by Maurice Bernstein.
Jesus Christ.
And so a lot of the rather wild claims made about Orson, particularly in his youth, are made in that text. A lot of them were debunked, most of them by Orson himself, who was like, I never did that. That never happened. Like, I didn't have King Lear memorized as a child. I'm sorry. I did not write a treatise on the history of drama, nor did I write a defense of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Like, he's like, none of these things are true. None of them happened. Eventually, he'd just be like, no, I didn't do it. Whenever someone would be like, did you really? He'd be like, no.
It is really funny to see where the line is drawn, because
Right.
he makes up so much bullshit about himself.
Yeah.
Well, in either case, Frank Brady claims that Bernstein gifted Orson a puppet theater, which he put to good use, and a professional box of magic tricks, which again feels just like, what bats, Mr. Wayne? It's the puzzle pieces fallen together. You know what I mean?
And the thing about it is, like, Orson's love of magic comes almost exclusively from his father. Like, Dick was a huge magic fan. So, like, Orson's love of
really
magic
surprise me.
comes from, and let's talk a little bit about Orson's artistic influences, because I got lots of notes there too.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Is that a separate document?
It's further down the page. It's like page 6 bleeding into 7.
Oh, additional notes. Here we go. Okay.
His mother would basically make sure the classics were taken care of. She would read to him from, among others, Shakespeare, Keats, Tennyson, Walt Whitman, like, made sure the classics were covered. A lot of these were read as bedtime stories. A friend of Beatrice's, Laredo Taft, who was a very prominent Chicago sculptor, was said to have gifted Orson his first paint set, which Orson said he loved the most always, if only I'd been better at it. But no, he loved to paint, and in fact, most of his youth is spent painting. Like, he loves painting. That's kind of his first love, I would say, artistically. His mother also insisted he receive piano lessons, and refusing to do it herself, enlisted her protege, Phyllis Fergus Hoyt, to give him piano lessons. Orson, I don't think, liked piano. He said after his mother died, he never touched the piano or the violin, and he was basically took lessons in both. Callow suggests that maybe he never liked piano and used his mother's death as an excuse, and kind of carried with it the guilt of not being able to be better at it, which makes some semblance of sense, honestly, in the grand scheme of things.
It does. It does. Kind of turns his mother's death into a bit of a convenient excuse, but I mean, I get it.
Right.
If you're already feeling bad about not being able to be good at it, and it's the thing that your mom did,
and you know your dad's not going to force you to do it, then why would you?
Yeah.
His father is a big fan of stage magic, and so would introduce him to magicians that would be traveling through Chicago, including, but not limited to, the great Thurston and Theodore Okito Bamberg, who was a master of shadow puppetry in particular. Orson would also become an avid film goer, and would beg his parents and Dr. Bernstein to take him to the theater any chance they got. He loved Douglas Fairbanks most of all, Lon Chaney, and the quote-unquote documentaries of Robert Flaherty, including Nanook of the North. And then his summers were spent in Highland Park for the most part, where he would basically meet with his friends of his mother's, Edward, Ned Moore, and Hazel Moore, another person that Callow says Bernstein was sleeping with, Hazel Moore, would meet any number of divas, tenors, and newspapermen.
Does Callow just think everybody's fucking? Like, is that his jam?
That's kind of what I meant when I said Callow is a little more prone to scandal than McGilligan is. Like,
fair.
Callow's more ready to believe that everyone fucking everybody else.
Man.
Whereas McGilligan's like, I don't think that's true, and here's why I don't think that's true.
At least get creative with the scandals, man. It doesn't have to be just fucking.
And yet so much of it is fucking.
Yeah, he could just have really controversial opinions.
Right.
About Birth of a Nation. I mean, look, you've got drama right there. I didn't even have to look for it.
Dick Wells was himself a pragmatic gentleman. And as a result, he, because of Wells's love for art and particularly painting, he's like, well, practically the best use of these skills would be to be a journalist. And as he got older, kind of pushed Orson toward cartoonists, like introducing him to the guy who drew like Mutt and Jeff and stuff like that. But one of the people he would meet in Highland Park as a child was Ashton Stevens, a 30-year veteran of the papers of William Randolph Hearst. Remember that name. It's going to be very important later.
Speaking of bad news and people we don't like.
Mm-hmm. And so Hearst, he was also Hearst's one-time banjo teacher. And
What?
Hearst basically, yes. So Hearst basically gave him a job as a critic in his papers. He ended up at the Chicago Chronicle, which was a Hearst paper. And he had, every year Hearst would travel to Chicago, and while he was there, he would visit his old banjo teacher. And so he had no shortage of Hearst stories to tell. So a lot of the first stories that Orson probably heard about William Randolph Hearst were from Ashton Stevens, this friend of a friend of his mother's.
Oh my God. Oh God. That scare me, Alfred. Fuck, come on. This is too easy of a layup.
McGilligan is all about creating because again, his book is called Young Orson. So he kind of, in whatever ways he can, draws all the attention to Citizen Kane and to Magnificent Ambersons when he can.
Come on.
During one of the annual trips to New York City, in fact, it was the one that we're going to talk about next in January 1925, where Orson would start to like notice different performers and then remember them for later when he would go to start making his own films. We'll get to that here in just a second. But first, Orson gets enrolled in public school in fall of 2024 and does not do well there.
Oh, God, shock.
Yeah, gets picked on and taunted mercilessly, struggled to fit in. According to Orson, he once pretended to be sick to keep from having to go to school. And as a result, his cautious doctor guardian whisked him to the hospital and forced him to get his appendix removed. Orson apparently kept saying, I'm starting to feel better. And they didn't believe him and took out his appendix anyway. Bernstein, for very obvious reasons, disputes this because malpractice.
Yeah. That didn't exist in 1920. Checks notes 4.
But yes, understood. Then you get the trip to New York, again, kind of a regular occurrence at this point for the Wells men and for Dr. Bernstein. Bernstein kind of takes the role of Beatrice in Orson's life, kind of fostering his love for the classics, wants him to see the very debut performance of famed Russian composer Igor Stravinsky. and of course is taken backstage to meet Stravinsky after the concert.
Of
And then
course.
afterwards is just pontificating in the lobby to anyone who would listen about how much he loved the concert. And there he should happen upon another little girl who would go on to be a co-worker of his, a future Mercury Theater actress, Agnes Moorehead,
Hey.
who described Welles as fantastic.
I mean, yeah.
And throughout this time, he would remember kind of these people he sees in smaller roles and things. He would see a play, and Erskine Sanford would be there in his 30s playing a frazzled old man, even though he's only in his 30s. Welles would remember him so that when he goes to make Citizen Kane, he casts, let me just check my notes here, Erskine Sanford as the editor of the paper.
I didn't see that coming.
Right. He sees a dancer named Harry Shannon and is really kind of taken with him in like a bar in Chicago that his dad was probably in, and remembers it and clocks him so that when he's going to make Citizen Kane and needs someone to play the father, he casts Harry Shannon. I forget the name of the actor, but the actor who plays the music tutor at the end of Citizen Kane as well is another like actor that Welles saw in a play and just thought was really funny. Like he becomes this kind of kid who reads the program front to back and like memorizes the name of every bit player he sees, and those bit players become important figures in his work later on.
Incredible.
Which is kind of awesome. The January 2025 trip would also be the trip where Welles meets one Harry Houdini.
Oh boy, did he also go backstage and touch the hand of Harry Houdini as well?
Not only did he touch the hand of Harry Houdini,
Jesus Christ.
Harry Houdini taught him a card trick.
Of course he did.
And then when Welles insisted on going back the next night, backstage, Houdini taught him a handkerchief trick. And during that time, Houdini apparently told Welles that a magician needed to practice his trick 1,000 times before he performed it on stage. That a true magician practiced every trick 1,000 times before he performed it on stage. After which there was a knock at the door. Houdini answers the door, and behind the door, there's a guy selling him a disappearing lamp trick. To which Houdini, after a couple of demonstrations, says, "It's great. It'll be in my act tomorrow."
Amazing.
Which, I mean, chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
That summer, Orson is sent to Camp Indianola on Lake Mendota near Madison, Wisconsin, which is a summer camp largely inhabited by the Chicago Jewish community, interestingly enough. At this point, his dad has purchased Hotel Sheffield, which is a hotel in Grand Detour, Illinois, which is a place where the Welleses would kind of vacation their summers quite a bit. The Hotel Sheffield was a huge, huge tourist destination in northern Illinois. And so Dick is spending, the winter renovating it, manages to close the deal while Orson's at camp. At camp, the camp is run by Frederick Mueller and his wife Mina. Mueller was called the captain in the summer. In the fall, the rest of the year, he would basically be a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Welles basically went to camp there. Dick made sure that Welles was properly looked after and that there was an art class for him to take. He was literally the only kid enrolled in the art class. It basically involved him and athletic director Lowell Frauchi going into a pasture. Orson would paint and Lowell would read a book. Lowell was also Orson's bunkmate, charged with watching over him and looking after him that summer.
Convenient.
Right. And Orson basically kind of trying to make sure Orson fit in. And Lowell basically said he didn't really have to do much convincing to get Orson involved. Like Orson was just game to try anything. So it made my job really easy. After seeing how much Orson loved camp. Oh, he also, I should say, at the closing ceremonies, performed an abbreviated version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Kick ass.
With a hat, a pair of glasses, a table, and a tea set. Performed Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at the closing ceremonies. Frauchi called it a stunning success. After camp, Dick was renovating the Hotel Sheffield, he basically arranged for Orson to stay with the head of the camp, Frederick Mueller, and his wife there in Madison. He was enrolled in the Washington Grade School in Madison, Wisconsin. Basically was picked on, teased. Eventually he would flourish, delivering a massive speech to the school assembly in which he said, after, giving a pretty damning critique of the school's art program, basically said, if the public school system can be critiqued, I will critique it. God bless him.
Orson, isn't that page 1 of Citizen Wells? I'm remembering that.
It literally is.
Reading.
Yes.
Okay,
I cracked open I was going to try to do the Citizen Wells reading, and I fell behind catching up on the Callow reading. So
I'm filling in that one little bit of our research.
Yeah.
Christ
but no,
alive.
that is the anecdote that opens Citizen Wells. Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Right?
Eloquent little fuck.
Yeah. In February of, when he returned home on Christmas break, his guardians took him to see Ziegfeld Follies in Chicago, the latest iteration of that, wherein Orson said, became acquainted with W.C. Fields for the first time and laughed himself sick. Laughed himself so hard they had to remove himself from the theater. And he was like sick for a week afterwards because W.C. Fields was so fucking funny.
That's fucking great.
He also said that Fields was way funnier on stage than he ever was on screen. And the two of them would eventually do a movie together in 1944.
Hey.
They do not share any scenes together, but when Welles did come to Hollywood, he and Fields did become friends with one another.
Oh, good for him.
Did get to know each other. The film was called Follow the Boys, was the 1944 film, which is like one of those like anthology films, like the Broadway Melody of 1939 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, hey, here's the war effort stuff that we're doing. And Orson Welles was credited as Orson Welles' Mercury Wonder Show, the magic show that he performed for the troops during World War II, which we will get to here in about a year and a half.
Oh God.
Daunting. So much to cover, and we're going to cover all of it. In 1926, February 19th, I should say, 1926, a blurb appears about Orson, a full article actually, in the Capital Times newspaper, with the headline "Cartoonist, Actor, Poet, and Only 10." About Orson's exploits in school and how awesome and wonderful he is in every regard.
We really need the newspapers to hype this bitch up even more.
And it's kind of like Callow himself is like, who would have told the paper? Would it have been Mueller? Would it have been Bernstein? Would Orson himself have written to the paper and been like, you got to see this kid? Like, what is it that gets people out to see Orson like performing like this, right? It's kind of wild. He actually submitted a poem to the paper. He wanted to submit a full story, but they're like, we don't have the space for that, kid. So he submits a poem instead called, it's actually, McGilligan includes it in its entirety in Young Orson. Let me see if I can find it here. It is called The Passing of a Lord, and I shall read it here.
Oh, good.
He sat upon a satin chair. A lord was he, and had that air. About his neck was golden fringe, his trousers ironed without a singe. At the side of him a table stood, made of finest Circassian wood. Covered it was with a beaded mat, and upon it reclined a Persian cat. His wig was powdered to the last degree, and silver buckles were at his knees. The window was thrown open and let in the air. The Lord sat still and was unaware. A moment before there had been a shot. The aim was true, but the Lord knew not. The next day they found him in a pool of his blood, his fine clothes torn and bespattered with blood.
Damn.
The Passing of a Lord.
Damn.
George Orson Welles, age 10.
Damn, George Orson Welles. Christ.
It was later this year that Orson, or I guess later in his life, that Orson would accuse his host during this time period, Frederick Mueller, of unwanted homosexual advances, basically, of molestation. Now, Welles always would kind of joke about these dalliances, these things, and would always say, oh, I was able to get out of them. He basically was, he called himself, was it the Lily Langtry of the homosexual set, is what he would say. Basically, every gay man in the world wanted a piece of little Orson to hear him tell it. Yep. Yep. And so Mueller was one of the first that he accuses of this, but he is not going to be the last. We'll absolutely get into this more as we go on, unfortunately. Apparently he always had a way out of it, either by just leaving the room or some witty retort, or, oh, I always had a headache. He would joke like I was a virgin in those days. He would joke. Basically with Leeming, he joked about this shit a lot.
Christ alive.
And Callow kind of disputes it as a result. Like Callow, the guy who think everyone fucking, kind of disputes a lot of this because of the jokey way that Orson kind of plays it all off. Like a 10-year-old in this position would probably not have the wherewithal to like do what Orson said he did, climb out of a window, run to a train depot, and hop a train to Chicago. Like, is kind of the evidence that Callow gives. Despite Mueller's wife, later leaving him because of his womanizing, and the fact that Lowell Frauchi basically said, after years of watching him, leading a summer camp of young boys, said he never saw any indication that was something that he was into. Welles maintained it was true to the end of his life, like maintained that he had been molested or attempted to be molested by Frederick Mueller. And it's one of those things, like, you don't fucking know what's true as a result. Like, it's just kind of fucked.
That sucks. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Believe victims of molestation, they need help.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, for real.
And I mean, both Callow and McGilligan kind of armchair psychologize Orson a little bit at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
I'm not going to get into that shit because I have better things to do.
Oh, no, I've already, like, psychoanalyzed the man as much as I care to. He's insane.
Right.
And that's why we're doing this.
Right. I mean, he wanted to be the one in control of his own myth. At the end of the day, that's the thing I keep coming back to. And so everything he says about himself, I have to take with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And so which is why one of the things I'm really loving about McGilligan's account is that he's checking a lot of outside sources beyond just Welles and his other biographers. Yes, he's checking in with them and doing his due diligence, and he quotes Welles quite a bit, but he's also doing his due diligence to kind of check other accounts and other potential people. Like, he's the one who talks, he's the one who has the interviews with Frauchi. He's the one who has the record of the reason for Mueller's divorce. Like, it's, and those are important pieces of information, I would say, to this context. So again, I don't necessarily disbelieve Orson, but in some ways you can cry wolf so many times that maybe it's not entirely believable.
Yeah. Good Lord.
And again, this is the first of many times Orson would claim to be the object of some older man's affections.
Yeah, good. And it's not the first time I'm going to be awkward and not have really much to say about it because of personal reasons, and I'll let the audience put two and two together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We will leave it at that.
Thank you.
Moving
for leaving
on.
It at that.
Moving on. For his 11th birthday, Orson is taken by Dick to see Harry Houdini's final Chicago performance, which Welles says later was hardly as good as his previous shows. Apparently his stage presence had kind of dwindled. However, Welles did say the last 2/3 of the act, which involved the Daredevil escape stunts, were some of the most riveting things Orson had ever seen. The first third, not so much, but the rest of it, amazing. Houdini would die later that fall of a burst appendix.
Right, because somebody punched him in the stomach.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Because he said he could survive any punch to the stomach.
Correct.
And didn't have time to prepare.
Yes.
Like an asshole.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you do. In the summer, Dick reopens Hotel Sheffield. Massive success. He includes on the menu of the place apparently known for its food, but on the menu he includes homemade red basement wine because prohibition.
All right, fair enough. That I can get behind. I come from my great great grandfather was a bootlegger.
Fuck yeah.
I know, right? Fuck the cops.
Ice Cube said it best.
Fuck the cops. Run booze in Philadelphia in the 20s. Yeah. Fun story. My great great grandfather and my great and great great grandfathers were bootleggers in Philadelphia during Prohibition, but they decided to go clean and legit about 2 months before the stock market crashed. So they lost literally everything because they didn't stick with a life of crime. So that be a lesson, kids, as I broadcast this from my little tiny apartment in Northeast Philadelphia. Always stay with crime. It pays way better.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Orson, of course, spent the summer there, pulling practical jokes, giving mock performances, finding ways to generally entertain himself and his little cousins. You'll notice I skipped the blackface section of this.
I did notice that, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And I will say, Orson does say he has his second sexual dalliance with a neighbor girl in Chicago shortly before this summer. At 11, he is canoodling with a girl up the street, and her mother comes home unexpectedly, and Orson basically gets the blame. That is around the time when Orson's guardians decide, you know what? We'll send him away to school. Public school, not for him. We're not going to make the same mistake we did at the Madison, Wisconsin school. We're going to send him to the Todd School for Boys in Woodstock, Illinois.
Oh, boy.
Orson, of course, they had to convince Orson that it was a good idea. And so they basically call up someone from the school to come visit them in Grand Detour. She comes up, basically, Dick points her to the art shack where Orson is. She goes, kind of lays it all out for Orson. Orson kind of listens solemnly, asks about, the prospects for creativity, artistic expression, asks about, if he's going to be able to practice theater, etc., to which she assures him yes. And he says, okay, I'll think about it. Bernstein takes him on a trip there. They tour the theater. Wells sees kind of the archaic light board and is like, fuck no, this is not going to work. Bernstein's like, look, it may not be much now, but that there's room for improvement and you could be the one to improve it. To which Wells says, okay, I can work with this. And with Orson on board that fall, the fall of 1926, which is where we'll pick up next week, we leave Orson in the care of the Todd School for Boys. And that, class, is the lesson.
God in heaven. All right. So homework for next time. We're covering just the Todd School.
We're covering the Todd School year. So from fall 1926 up until 1931, which is I think when he leaves for Ireland.
This is absolute nonsense. I love it. Terrific.
I do want to say, Hope.
Yes.
Like 2 days after we recorded our last episode. And our last episode, I mentioned that I had purchased Citizen Wells from a used bookstore.
He's got a disc, it looks like.
There was a Kino Lorber sale like the week after our last episode, and like 2 days after, or like the week we recorded it.
Discs.
So the like 2 days after we recorded the episode, my Blu-ray copies of Orson Welles' Macbeth and The Lady from Shanghai arrived in the mail from Kino Lorber.
Okay.
So I am expanding my Wells collection ever much every day.
Oh my good
But
Lord.
I did say that as I bought more Wells paraphernalia, I would mention it on the podcast. And so this is me mentioning it on the podcast.
Well, your mentioning is noted, and it's horrifying, and I love it, and I'm glad you're my friend. Do we want to wrap it up?
Let's
Do we
wrap
have
it up.
anything else? Yeah, okay. So I've been Hope Lichtner, probably. I don't know what's happening in the world at this point. But shit sucks. And it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And just go keep kicking ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna get better unless you try to make it better.
Exactly.
And as I like to say, I'm sorry to end this episode on kind of a downer note, but that's where we are as a society right now.
We still need to do our social medias, but yeah.
Well,
it doesn't get more downer than that.
It really doesn't. So, but like as I've been saying, God needed 10 commandments, and I think we only need 2, and that's be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.
I love it.
Yeah. My social media, the only one I care to promote, unless I've made the Tumblr at this point, is my AO3. I'm working on shit. Shit's coming down the pipe. It's gonna be a good time.
I love it.
I have no interest in promoting any of my other social medias.
Fair
because
enough.
fuck social media.
Because fuck social media.
Yes.
I recently completely blitzed my Twitter presence.
Yay!
Deleted the fucking app and everything. Fuck
there
Elon Musk. But don't actually fuck Elon Musk. He doesn't deserve it. But fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Not literally, but metaphorically, in a way that he wouldn't enjoy.
Please stop putting that image in my head and continue your sentence.
I am on some forms of social media, but not all. At Chewy Walrus. Listen to my other show, Disenfranchised, at Disenfranchised Podcast, wherever you get podcasts. But yeah, I'm at Chewy Walrus on most forms of social media. You can also buy my book that I wrote with my partner. It's called Check In, Check Out. It's the Hunger Games with 20-somethings in a hotel. It's goofy, it's silly, it's very fun. Check it out on Amazon.
You can buy a physical copy. It pretty much it slaps. Yeah. I've got it sitting on my nightstand, and I'll read it one day.
I was about to ask how far you'd gotten into it, and I guess that answers my question.
I'm a terrible friend. I'm a terrible friend. Believe it or not, I've needed to delve heavily into the comfort of the familiar this past year.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
What could be going on this year that would cause you to need to do that?
Well, let me tell you, Dune Part 2 really didn't live up to expectations, so I really needed to retreat even harder into Korosami and Kate Vi and Katradora and Griddle Hark. And I know I'm missing a ship.
I don't know what any of those things are.
You're better off for it. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. But here we are.
Hope. I'm glad that you are here with me at the end of all things.
Oh, Christ alive. Don't start quoting Lord of the Rings. We'll be here all night. Why didn't the Eagles carry Rosebud into Mordor?
Look, we can be found at Wells U Pod on the forms of social media that we have chosen, at least Instagram and Blue Skype, hopefully Tumblr at this point. Hopefully you can go on Tumblr and see Hope just retumbling all the Orson Welles shit.
I will have to get on that as soon as possible. And if you go to our Instagram, we've probably posted some photos of the many times I've been to Grover's Mill, because that was a recent excursion for me as of the time of this recording.
And I'm going to try to post photographs relevant to the episode in the days and weeks following each individual episode. So hopefully you've seen a number of pictures of the Welleses in their youth, and also of, as of this episode, and maybe in the days after it comes out, of baby Orson as well. Baby Orson.
Oh, okay. Well, that's coming now. That's coming to Disney Plus next fall. Baby Orson. Can we outdo Grogu? I think we can.
Wah, the French.
All right, that's the end of the episode. Class dismissed.
Until next time, class.
Keep on trucking.
We will sell no wine before it's time.
And we're going to keep quoting random Orson Welles things. Gee, brain, what are we going to do tonight?
Same thing we do every night.
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. We stay up too late reading one more chapter off of AO3. Good night, everybody.
Good night, America.